China has changed the ending to Fight Club so that the authorities win. It's just funny to say it.
Mr. Reagan.
It's a new year and not much has changed. Houses are still selling in like a week. Interest rates are at zero. Our government is still borrowing money. Printing money. 5 trillion to be exact. What could possibly go wrong? Meanwhile, consumer confidence has hit a 10-year low. Inflation's hit 6.8%, with parts of the U.S. seeing rates as high as 8%. Something is not adding up. So what can you do? Well, you can play it safe. Put some of your assets in precious metals. This will keep your money away from the volatility of the markets. It'll keep it away from inflation, and it will let you sleep at night. Now this month, Noble Gold is giving away a free 1/10 ounce solid gold American Eagle coin with any qualifying plan that you start. So talk to an expert at Noble Gold and they'll run you through your options for keeping your money safe. There's no pressure, there's no hassle, there's no call centers. You just get a chance to speak with somebody who knows what they're talking about for once. How refreshing is that? Call Noble Gold at 877-646-5347 or visit their website at noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. A lot of news agencies have covered this story, but I'm going to read the article from the BBC. All right, so the BBC writes, the ending to the cult 1999 U.S. film Fight Club has been removed for viewers in China and replaced by a screen with a message saying the authorities won. And I actually have the message up here, and it says, through the clue provided by Tyler, the police rapidly figured out the whole plan and arrested all criminals, successfully preventing the bomb from exploding. After the trial, Tyler was sent to a lunatic asylum receiving psychological treatment. He was discharged from the hospital in 2012. Wow, how beautifully written. I will continue reading the BBC article here. They say the original ending saw Edward Norton's character killing his imaginary alter ego, Tyler Durden, played by Brad Pitt, before bombs destroyed buildings, in the climax to a subversive plot to reorder society, dubbed Project Mayhem. In China, before the explosions, a message now says the police foiled the plot, arrested the criminals, and sent Durden to a lunatic asylum. Director David Fincher's film has recently been added to streaming platform Tencent Video, and Human Rights Watch described the changes as dystopian. That's exactly what they are. That is exactly what this is. This is a sort of authoritarian dystopia in China. I mean, yeah, the way that the Chinese control their society, and especially like the North Koreans, that's really what people were writing about 50 years ago, 60 years ago, even longer, or earlier than that, about what a dystopian society would look like. And the Soviet Union was obviously very similar. Cuba, Venezuela. We talk about this in a sort of fantastical sci-fi sense, that this could happen in America or something like that, but it has happened all over the world. That's what Marxism does, AOC. Chuck Palahniuk, I don't know actually how to pronounce his name, who wrote the 1996 novel that Fight Club was adapted from, wrote sarcastically on Twitter, "This is super wonderful. Everyone gets a happy ending in China." I love that. Lots of people on Twitter have been ridiculing this change, including Ted Cruz. I've got the Ted Cruz tweet here. Ted Cruz wrote, "The second rule of Fight Club is we do and say whatever the Chinese communist censors tell us to do and say." I thought that was actually quite clever. Now, why did I want to make this video? Well, first of all, it's funny, okay? Obviously, this is funny. We all laugh at it, and I think that's a good sign because we're still free in America for the most part. Yes, we have some new authoritarian rules and stuff like that, but for the most part, we think for ourselves. We recognize that this is absurdly authoritarian, and laughably so even. Now, this is a work of fiction, but it's important, I think, that works of fiction, ideas like this, are able to be expressed. You've got to be able to say things that force people to think, or that inspire people to think independently, to think critically about the way our society is structured, and what's really going on in society, what's going on behind the scenes, are we being lied to, this kind of stuff. So I think thinking about our obedience to the authorities and how our society is structured, and thinking about all these things is critical to a healthy society. Unfortunately, they're not allowed to do that in China. But what I think is even more poignant is that we're not really allowed to do that in America anymore either. Consider how YouTube censors my videos. Consider how Twitter censors Donald Trump. They kicked Donald Trump off their platform. And so actually the censorship in America in some ways is actually worse than the censorship in China. Okay, it's probably not worse, but it's definitely, in some ways, it's as sinister, if not more sinister, because we're talking about real life. So in the book 1984, George Orwell warned of a dystopian future in which the authorities would take historical facts and they would manipulate them for their own benefit. If they wanted to promote a particular idea, they would just change history to conform to the promoting of that idea. And that's what we do today. I mean, that's what happens today. If you look at something like critical race theory, what do they promote? They promote this idea that white people are inherently bad and black people are inherently good. And they create a kind of false history, a pseudo-history that doesn't reflect actual events from history in order to demonize white people and in order to create the illusion that black people are all amazing and perfect. They promote books like White Fragility and How to Be an Anti-Racist, which promote these ideas. You have universities doing this. You have businesses promoting these ideas. You even have the military promoting these ideas. It's ridiculous. And then, of course, you have whole educational programs like the 1619 Project, which creates a completely false history to promote this idea that white people are evil. You have massive organizations like the Nation of Islam, which creates entirely fictitious historical events to suggest that white people are all demonic and black people are all, the true good humans, true Israelites, true beautiful, perfect people, and God's chosen people, and in fact, the white people are this monstrosity, this demonic monstrosity. I mean, it's bizarre, the kind of crap that people will come up with, absolutely just racist garbage in order to demonize white people, and they change history. They change history. To me, that's just like mind-blowingly authoritarian dystopia. I mean, that is exactly what it is. And we're living through that. That stuff's actually happening. Now, you guys all know this stuff. You guys have all heard about all this stuff. It's upsetting and it's unpleasant to know that this stuff is going on. However, I would like to end on an optimistic note, on a positive note. I would like to say that in the same way that we look at this, the ending of Fight Club being altered in China, and we laugh, I think that we have an even more visceral response when we see things like critical race theory being promoted in our schools to children. And the great thing about this is that it's not just conservative parents who are looking at this stuff saying this is BS. I think you have a lot of even Democrat voting parents going to the school board saying, I don't want this stuff taught to my kids. I don't want this racially divisive nonsense, this pseudo-history, this historical revisionism. I don't want this stuff being taught to my children. I want my children taught real history, or just teach them math and piss off and I'll teach them history. So many parents are recognizing that what's going on here is absolutely evil, that they're voting out Democrats and they're voting in Republicans like Glenn Youngkin, because even if they are not a Republican, even if they don't like Republicans, they recognize that at least Republicans are fighting to protect their children from this fake history, from this pseudo-history, from this historical revisionism that just divides us by race, by gender. You got all these feminists talking about how, historically there has just always been this oppressive patriarchy. Forget Queen Victoria, forget Cleopatra, forget all these important, powerful women from history. No. History has always been oppressive to women, and that's final, right? I mean, it's all a lie. It's all a carefully constructed lie to demonize certain groups and to elevate other groups. And both Republicans, Democrats, independents, people of all stripes are starting to wake up, starting to recognize it for what it is, and starting to fight against it in America. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because we're just progressing the country to a much more positive place by recognizing how sinister this stuff is and fighting against it. And I think that's great. So I will end on that note, positive. Hopefully you guys feel better about everything that's going on. But I also just thought that the whole concept of China changing that ending to be like, these guys didn't end up winning. They ended up losing because the authorities figured it out and they stopped them. And it's just like a note at the end. I mean, that's just too funny. I love that. I suppose that's a lesson in like how to be authoritarian in the least convincing way possible. I feel like it's almost counterproductive. Like if the Chinese people are reading that and they're at all aware of the fact that this was modified by the Chinese government, they're just going to want to see the actual ending. So they're going to try to seek that out, right? And that's just going to make them hate their government even more, I suppose. I mean, that's my presumption. I may be wrong about that. I don't know. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. That's it for me. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much that isn't so. And they're authoritarian dictators who change history to try to promote things that they like. Good night.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy? The conservative, so-called, is the one that says, less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.